Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to America's hometown track for the now going to be 7th time for the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. But tonight, as we kick off season number 10 of the Oval Series, it's important to make the announcement that this is no longer just the ASRC Oval Series. As a matter of fact, the good folks over at the SM Racing Products organization have decided to team up together here with Attrition Sim Race Campus for season number 10. They're going to be on board sponsoring the entire season and also going to be making the championship just a little bit more exciting for these drivers. Because up for grabs for the champion of season number 10, of course, that is a very long way to go from here. But up for grabs for the champion, put together by the folks at SM Racing Products, is going to be a custom ASRC themed button box for all their effort in competing for these next 12 weeks in the ASRC Oval Series. So, of course, a very big thank you to our friends over at SM Racing Products for coming on board with the series. And definitely be sure to go check them out both on Facebook or at their website, sm-racingproducts.com. That said, like I mentioned earlier, we are kicking off season number 10 of the ASRC Oval Series. Kind of crazy to imagine that things have been going for this long now, but we're out here at the South Boston Speedway. 100 laps going to be the distance, just like you've always known it here tonight. Not using the street stock anymore like we did last season. By very popular demand of the drivers of the league, we have swapped on over to the brand new late model stock that came on out onto the iRacing.com platform just a little bit under 2 weeks ago. So still a very new experience for a lot of the drivers out here in the field tonight. So maybe we will just see this brand new race car end up being the great equalizer. Maybe we will see some drivers that have maybe struggled in some of our previous car choices rising up to the top. But I'll tell you what, race fans, Season 10 of the ASRC Oval Series is here, and it's going to be bigger and bigger than ever, courtesy of the folks over at SM Racing Products. That said, looking like drivers are making their way on down to the starting grid right about now, so how about we take a look-see on over there and see just what the field looks like for tonight's main event. Starting out on the pole here tonight, that's going to be the number 45 of Mr. Travis Sukup, a driver that tied the record for wins in a single season last season. He managed to take it home 6 times, but just was not quite enough to take home the championship. And speaking of drivers who took home a whole host of wins last season, that's the 99 of Mr. Tyler McRae, starting to his outside, who did take home the championship, edging out his teammate of Travis Sukup by just a couple of points. Third place can go back to that 93 of Mr. Jason Gardner, league admin, starting up on the podium. Good for him. But starting his outside, that's the 00 of Christopher Bryan. And Christopher is a rookie here to the ASRC Oval Series and to ASRC as a whole. This is Bryan's first ever start here with ASRC as a league, so as a driver we're definitely going to be having to keep an eye on here tonight. Rolling it off back in P number 5 though, that's the 74 of Mr. Jeremy Morrow, one of the folks over from the SM Racing Products organization. He's going to be rolling it off P number 5. Sixth place going to go back to the Canadian driver. That's going to be the 38 of Mr. Brandon Feeney, rolling it off P number 6, with 4-time league champion Brian Sabelski rolling it off in P number 7 to try and take home a 5th one here this season. Gonna have to see just what he's able to make happen in these brand new late models. 8th place going to go off to the 15 of Garrett Streets, the other half of the SM Racing Products organization. And that 14 of Nico Morelli is going to be rolling it off P number 9 to round out our 9-car field here this evening. Green flag up in the air. we are rolling here at the South Boston Speedway, and already a bit of contact further back in the back. Little bit of a bump between the 74 and the 00. That is Jeremy Morrow and Christopher Bryan. Brandon Feeney stuck up high there in that number 38 machine, that Aaron's 38. Not exactly the line he wants to be on, but this is actually doing Feeney a pretty good favor, because I know that 38 driver has another league race coming up in just a couple of days, also utilizing this late model stock, so he's going to need all the practice he can get to get himself prepared for the rest of the events that he has going on in this brand new late model. Everyone's single filing it out around the speedway for the most part, looking like currently the closest battle between Christopher Bryan and Jeremy Morrow. Bryan really knowing how to wield this late model stock. He may be a rookie here to the Attrition Sim Race campus, but that certainly does not mean he is a rookie to late model racing as a whole. Started back in position number 4, still holding on to that spot without much trouble whatsoever. He's got a whole lot of pressure from behind though. That's Jeremy Morrow and Brandon Feeney both contesting him for this position here. 6 laps in the books here this evening. Fuel might just end up being a concern for these late model drivers. Of course, South Boston, one of the trickier tracks on the schedule. It's one of the tracks where we've seen very varying fuel strategies. Some drivers even managing to stretch the fuel all the way to the end. Of course, we're not driving, excuse me, a street stock here this evening, and we're certainly not driving the nearly 10-year-old Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS that these late model stocks are replacing. So, gonna have to see if any of these late model drivers did their homework on just how much fuel they're going to be consuming throughout this race. Because like I said, this car only released to the iRacing.com platform about a little under 2 weeks ago, so still a very new experience, and for some of these drivers this is their first time behind the wheel of one of these late model stock machines. Of course, from what I've seen around the iRacing community and talking to some of the drivers out in the field, they think this new late model, something feels a little bit off about it. Whether that's just that new car smell that no one's quite gotten used to, or if there's something deeper going on, remains to be seen. But a lot of the drivers taking behind the wheel of these late models have said that something feels a little bit off about it. And we'll just have to see how will these drivers manage to make do breaking in this brand new car. Of course, Travis Sukup, Tyler McRae, your 2 race leaders. These are the 2 cars we saw contesting for the lead all of last season back in the street stocks. Sukup and McRae, the 2 Droppin' Bombs racing drivers that competed full-time, took home every single win for season number 9. And of course, we're only 15 laps in, but they're looking to start off season number 10 on a high note as well. Last season, of course, Tyler McRae did take home the championship in the street stock. Then season before that, that was the final season where we used the Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS, the old late model. That was taken home by Brian Sabelski. So we'll have to see as well how Brian is going to be able to manage to make things happen here this season now that we're back in the late model. Right now, looking like that Club West Racing driver is having a little bit of trouble. He's currently being scored back in the 9th position, down 2 spots from where he qualified. And look at the lap times. He's about 0.2 of a second off the pace, already only 19 laps in, so something not handling the way the driver of that number 85 machine is wanting it to handle. We'll also have to keep an eye on him and see if things maybe start to come in for him later on in the race, but right now, Brian Sabelski not having the greatest time to kick off season number 10. A little bit further up the field there. Back up on the battle for 4th. Jeremy Morrow, Christopher Bryan, and Brandon Feeney all duking it out here. Currently, Jeremy Morrow, the 74 SM Racing driver, kind of cut in the middle of everything here. Feeney really trying to get down low in that 38 Aaron's entry. Really trying to just poke the nose under there, because that's all he really needs. Once he gets the nose under that 74, he can bump him up the track and start to try and make the pass, and he's going to try and do it there. Side by side, coming out of turn number 4 across the line, and they make contact again. Feeney nearly down into the inside wall there. This has been very disastrous for that Canadian driver, but despite that, he is still pushing. He is still committing to this with everything he's got. And now Garrett Streets is getting involved in this battle as well. Streets has caught up to this pack without too much difficulty. Nico Morelli also closing the gap as well. This is turning almost into a bit of a 5-car battle. Nose to tail for 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Feeney still trying to figure out a way to get around that 00 Christopher Bryan, but it's just not quite working out for him. And actually, he's moved back just a little bit. Now he's trying to get around Jeremy Morrow. Christopher Bryan. Christopher has actually built up a pretty considerable gap in just a matter of moments. He's closed the gap on Jason, and now he's battling it out up in to try and get into the 3rd position, and may even start looking at taking home the checkered flag. Of course, that's still a very big what if, and looks like we have trouble out on the speedway. Caution flag is out, and Brandon Feeney is around, and it looks like so is Garrett Streets. First caution flag of the evening, and there is our race leaders. Getting a little bit of contact there as well. But that's going to bring out the first caution flag of the evening. Let's see if we can't take a look back and see what all happened to Feeney and Streets. Back on, looking like about lap number 29 here. Looking down at that 38 Aaron's entry. Trying to make the pass on the 74 of Jeremy Morrow. Not quite able to make it stick. Maybe a little bit of contact there, and then Feeney tries to slow it down to keep the car saved, and Streets nowhere really to go there. Might have to break down a top-down view of what all just went down there. Feeney trying to dive it really down low in turns 3 and 4. Gets a little bit loose. And Streets was just right there behind him. Not enough time to get that late model slowed down. And then physics did what physics does best. Let's take a moment, ride on board with the 27 SM Racing Products driver. Right on board with Garrett Streets, heading down into turn 3 and 4. Brandon Feeney tries to go down low and get around his teammate, that number 74 machine. And just didn't expect the 38 to slow it down as much as he did coming out of the corner there. So just like that, that's going to be caution number 1 of the evening. Still on lap number 29, as caution flags will not be counting this evening. So race still going to be scored on lap 29 when we go green flag racing again. And it's looking like Christopher Bryan is now being scored as the leader of this race after that little bit of incident up in the front, but we are going green flag racing again, and Christopher Bryan is our new race leader here. A little bit of bumping and banging down the backstretch there. Drivers all jockeying for position, and there's another spin, and that's yellow flag number 2. Maybe, maybe not, but there's not a caution flag on the speedway right now. Everyone's still rolling. Tyler McRae, your new race leader, and there are late models everywhere with a yellow flag not out. I guess nobody really fell below the necessary threshold for iRacing to throw the yellow flag there, so there we go. Now the yellow flag's out on the speedway. That is going to be caution number 2. And I'm not sure what exactly actually prompted the yellow flag, unless there was a car stopped on the speedway somewhere. I'm not seeing a whole lot of anything. So how about we take a look back, and at least take a look back at that initial incident and try and break down what all went down there, but I'm not sure what happened to actually bring out the yellow, unless there's still just a car stopped on the speedway somewhere from that initial incident. So taking a look back here, looking down at the 45 of Mr. Travis Sukup, going down into turns 3 and 4, it looks like. It looks like it starts with a bit of a nudge between the 14 and the 74. That's Nico Morelli. And then at 74, Jeremy Morrow got bumped a little bit further up. He gets into the rear end of our race leader, and really everyone behind was just kind of an unfortunate bystander there that was involved. Let's actually move the camera up here. Look down at that 74 of Jeremy Morrow. A little bit of nudge with Nico Morelli there, but they both keep it rolling, then head down into turns 1 and 2. Bit of a bump with our race leader, that 0-0, that rookie of Christopher Bryan. And everyone else just kind of has to go with the flow there. Let's take a look back. Let's take a look on board with Mr. Brandon Feeney going into that incident. Riding on board with the 38 of Brandon Feeney. Heading down into turns 1 and 2, there's a little bit of nudging up in the front, and then he manages to get it slowed down. So Feeney actually managed to get through that incident without issue, but for everyone else, everything just kind of fell apart right there. Well, that's going to bring out the second caution of the evening. It's looking like Jason Gardner and Tyler McRae are going to be scored as our race leaders on this restart. The rest of the field all jumbled up. Green flag up in the air though. Let's try this thing again. 32 laps in the books. All late models still on the speedway, and it looks like all late models still on the lead lap. Side by side here, coming through turns 1 and 2, this is the 2 SM Racing drivers, both halves of the SM Racing product organization here. Jeremy Morrow down on low line, Garrett Streets up on the high side. They may be teammates, but it doesn't look like either of them is going to be doing any favors here. They are both out to try and capture a win here this evening. Racing side by side like that, so it's going to allow Travis Sukup and Brandon Feeney to both catch up to him as well. Sukup has a bit of damage on the front of that 45 machine. That is not going to doing him any favors in the front of this race, but sure enough, Garrett Streets, he got stuck up on the high line, and just like that, he's fallen all the way back down to 8th in just a couple of laps there. Once you get up on that high line, there's not a whole lot you can do to hold on to it. 36 laps in the books though. 2 caution flags already have come this evening. Still a long way for these late model stock drivers to go. Tyler McRae up in the front of this one. And it looks like kind of a fitting place for him to be, because looking back at our past races here in the league, Tyler McRae has the most wins of any driver in ASRC here at this speedway in the ASRC Oval Series. Way back in season number 2, a long time ago, was taken home by Connor Wagner, which we have not seen in a long while. Then Brian Sabelski took it home in season number 5, Benjamin Harst in season 6, Coy Hasselou in season 7, all drivers we've not seen in a couple of seasons now, with the exception of course, Brian Zabelski, who is in this race right now and is currently up in the 3rd position, despite all the trouble he had at the beginning of this race. It looks like he's finally getting that late model handling how he needs it to be. But Tyler McRae, he took home the win here back in season number 8, and he took home the win here at season number 9. So McRae, he's got a lot of history with this track, and right now, he is proving that he can wheel it around this speedway in the brand new late model stock just as well as he could in the old late model, just as well as he can in a street stock, and probably just as well as he can in any other short track race car. And of course, South Boston Speedway, a track that has a pretty decent amount of history here with the league as well, because both for Season 7 and Season 8, back in the late models, this was the championship crowning race. And side by side, up in the front, side by side for position number 2, this is the battle for P number 2 between Jason Gardner and Brian Sabelski. Sabelski was side by side with Gardner for a couple of corners there, but he moved back just a little bit. Maybe not quite ready to make that pass happen. Still not even halfway in this race. Plenty of time left to go to get this thing sorted out. The battles are breaking out all around the speedway. Gardner and Sabelski duking it out for second. Sukup and that rookie driver, that's Christopher Bryan, and Brandon Feeney's in there as well. Brandon Feeney bumping himself up a couple of spots, using that hole that Travis Sukup created and punching straight through down on the bottom to get past Christopher Bryan. Feeney now finding himself up in the top 5. Feeney, a part-time driver here in the ASRC Oval Series, was able to attend a couple of races last season, a couple of races back in season number 8. He'll make an appearance here at the opening race of season number 10 and finding himself up inside the top 5. There might be a decent possibility that we will be seeing more of the Canadian driver throughout the rest of this season, especially as he is looking to try and make a pass on that number 45. Not quite the run he needed to make it happen, but he was certainly looking down there to try and pass a driver that currently is tied for the record with the most wins in the ASRC Oval Series. 51 laps in the books, though. We have officially crossed the halfway point in this race. The clock is now ticking for these late model stock drivers. Not a lot of time left to be comfortable, not a lot of time left to play nice with each other, and especially here at the South Boston Speedway. While it is not the shortest track we go to, coming in at 0.4 miles or 0.64 kilometers in length, it is arguably the most narrow one. Passing here is incredibly difficult, and of course, like we've seen with the previous 2 yellows, any sort of incident, more or less, instantly becomes a track blocking incident, no matter how minor it is. Side by side, further back in the field though, this is Nico Morelli and Garrett Streets battling it out for the 7th position. Morelli, a driver we saw a pretty good bit in season 7 and 8. Then the participation dropped off a little bit in season number 9. Morelli said, "I'm just really not a fan of the street stock the way that I enjoy driving the late model." We will just have to see what Morelli thinks of this new late model stock coming in to this 10th season of ASRC racing. Definitely would be great to see that number 14 driver out here on the speedway more often, but that is a what if on just how much he enjoys this brand new race car. Currently running back in the 7th position. The battle up here in the mid-pack still heating up. Travis Sukup, Brandon Feeney duking it out, and Feeney has made the pass on Travis Sukup. Feeney now finding himself up in the top 4, and he is putting the pressure down to try and get around league admin Mr. Jason Gardner in that ASRC Racing number 93. Not a whole lot of time left to go though. 59 laps in the books. We're only going to have about 40 more times around this speedway to get things settled for the rest of the evening, to get things all sorted out here. And speaking of drivers, with not a lot of time left, Nico Morelli has made another pass. He has got himself up into the 6th position. He got around Christopher Bryan without too much hassle. I'll tell you, race fans, we have completely jumbled this running order over time and time again. Christopher Bryan started up in the 4th position. At one point, he was leading this race. Now all the way back in the 7th position. Travis Sukup, another driver that has led laps this race. Now he's all the way back in 5th. And now up here, Brandon Feeney is continuing his war on these podium drivers. He is now finding himself in the top 3 here this evening. Brandon Feeney, a part-time driver. I believe his best finish last season was 5th. Now looking to try and take home a podium on round 1 of this brand new season. Now I'll tell you what, race fans, you always gotta be excited for the first round of a new season. It's a blank slate for all of these drivers, and for many drivers, that is just what they need to kick off a good season. You start off with a good start, and sometimes you just use that energy to get a good finish. Jeremy Morrow going to be the first driver to make his pit stop, though, currently being scored 3 laps down and pitting under green. Looks like he spent about 47 seconds down on pit lane. A lot of other drivers have made pit stops, though. A lot of drivers have come down to pit lane under the cautions. Looking at our dashboard here, you can see a lot of drivers came down on lap 28 under that first yellow. A couple other drivers came out on lap 31 under the second one. Jeremy Morrow, though, that was his first pit stop, and it's all the way on lap number 61. So Morrow's trying a very, very different approach to pit strategy, but uncomfortable and unorthodox pit strategies are strategies that we have seen take home wins here in the ASRC Oval Series. His teammate, Garrett Streets, down on pit lane as well. This is actually going to be Garrett Streets' 3rd pit stop here this evening. So it looks like Streets going to be doing everything he can to try and cram as much fuel as he can into that late model stock, and maybe also try and get a little bit of the damage that is on that number 15 fixed up as well. Street's going to come back out onto the speedway. It looks like he is going to miss pit exit, and the yellow flag is out for something entirely unrelated. What a bizarre time we find ourselves in. I was almost sure that that yellow flag was going to come out for Streets having trouble in pit exit, but sure enough, it looks like Christopher Bryan went around in that 00 entry. So let's see if we can't take a look back and see what all happened. I'm not getting word from race control that there was really any sort of incident here, so let's see if we can't see what all happened to that 00 Christopher Bryan. Heading down, coming out of turns 3 and 4, and just a bit of a nudge from behind from our race leaders. That was Tyler McRae that made contact with him right there, and Brian Sabelski just behind. Looks like a little bit of a case of wrong place, wrong time. Tyler McRae trying to push that late model with everything he has to keep Brian Sabelski away from him. And just a little bit of a love tap to that 00 of Christopher Bryan that was looking to be going a lap down. Let's take one more look back at that. Let's ride on board with Tyler McRae going into that corner. See what all he saw coming out of turn number 4. Race leader trying his best to hold on to the lead. A little bit of a nudge to the back of the 00. I don't think he expected Christopher Bryan to have that much of a speed difference between the two of them. And as things get sorted out, it does look like several drivers elected to pit under this yellow. So let's Wait a moment for the time and scoring to get sorted out here. Brian and Brandon Feeney both elected to stay out. Tyler McRae, Travis Sukup, Nico Morelli, Jason Gardner all pitted. Christopher Bryan pitted as well. And of course, we saw Garrett Streets and Jeremy Morrow pit under the green flag just a couple of laps ago. That said, green flag up in the air once again. Brandon Feeney, Brian Sabelski, your two race leaders here. Still side by side coming out of turns 1 and 2, side by side, heading into 3 and 4, and potentially trouble. Jeremy Morrow is around. But we keep it green. Still 2 by 2 for the race lead here. 4 cars all duking it out. Make it 5. Nico Morelli's in there as well. 5 cars battling it out for our race lead. 25 laps left to go. Brandon Feeney once again finding himself stuck up on the high line here. That is not going to make his job very easy. He is just falling back positions. There is no room for him to bring that 38 down onto the preferred line. Nico Morelli going to sneak his nose in there as well. He wants a piece of this. And that 15 of Garrett Streets behind him, not on the lead lap, so Streets going to back out of it just a little bit. But now it's Sabelski and McRae duking it out for the lead. 24 laps left to go. Travis Sukup, teammate to Tyler McRae, he's up here in this battle for the podium as well. 24 laps left to go. Nico Morelli in that 14, he has some speed under the hood of that 14. He's going to get around Brian Sabelski as well. And now again, a driver that regularly finishes not inside the podium, looking to try and take home a podium in his first race of the season. 22 laps left to go. All these drivers still just completely under a blanket. Jason Gardner catching on up to that 38 of Brandon Feeney as well. Feeney just stuck up on that high line. There is nothing he can really do in that 38 machine to get where he needs to be. There's Christopher Bryan as well. Bryan's going to go down low on him as well. Feeney had a really good burst of speed on that restart, but now things not quite working out for him the way he needs them to. Up in the lead, it's Tyler McRae, Travis Sukup making up the front 2 cars, duking it out for the lead. Not an unfamiliar sight for these drivers. McRae and Sukup have been duking it out time and time again for the race lead for the past 12 races, even a bit more than that, and now they're looking to try and repeat history here tonight. Let's take a moment to zoom out here and see just what the situation is around the speedway. You can see just how much of a gap McRae and Sukup have built up over the rest of the field. Only about 2 car lengths between our 2 drivers in first and second. But then all the way back to Nico Morelli, that's where things start to get a bit difficult. About 5 or 6 car lengths between Morelli and Sukup. Then even further back for Sabelski, and an even bigger gap between Sabelski and Gardner. About, call it, almost half a straightaway between these late model drivers. And then of course Brandon Feeney having a bit of handling issues under the hood of that 38. And at the same time, he also now has lap cars between himself and Jason, so he might need a yellow to come out to get back up into this battle. Feeney currently the last car on the lead lap. "13 laps left to go. Tyler McRae, your race leader. He's being the 99 on the timing and scoring board, the 81 on his actual paint scheme down on the speedway. That Graphics Unlimited number 81/99, whatever you want to call it. For the purposes of timing and scoring, he's going to be the 99, but just to clear up any confusion down there. Tyler McRae leading this race. His teammate of Mr. Travis Sukup just behind. Will he be able to close the gap though? Double high five is going to be going up in the air this time by 10 laps left to go for our race leaders. McRae, last time by, set the fastest lap of any driver on the speedway with a 15.5 flat, which I guess just goes to show how much the tires have fallen off over the course of tonight's event. The fastest lap overall of tonight's event was set by Mr. Travis Sukup with a 15.24. So right now, drivers setting lap times nearly 0.3 of a second slower than their personal bests. And that seems to be the trend almost all the way down the field. Brandon Feeney, best lap 15.35 last time by, was a 16.09. Jason Gardner 15.36 last time by, 15.6. So pretty much everyone out here on the speedway has lost about 0.3 of a second per lap as these tires have worn down. A little bit further back in the field though, speaking of Jason Gardner, he is starting to close the distance on Mr. Brian Sabelski. 5 laps left to go. He has closed the gap down to, call it, about 0.4 of a second. Big high five is up in the air though. 5 laps left to go. Going to be 4 to go when we cross the line. And these two duking it out are the closest battle on the speedway. The battle for the 4th position. Gardner is really closing the distance on Sabelski. Sabelski nearly a full 1/10 of a second slower than Gardner last time by, but will he be able to make the pass? It's one thing to be able to catch up to him, it's another thing to be able to get around him in just 2 more laps. 2 laps left to go. McRae holding on to a comfortable, almost full second lead. The battle we're watching right now, the battle for the 4th position. Gardner going to try and take it up high. And he's going to lose a ton of time on Sabelski. White flag up in the air one more time around the South Boston Speedway. And coming out of turn number 4, Tyler McRae gonna take it home once again. His 3rd win at the South Boston Speedway, and as a matter of fact, his 3rd win in a row at South Boston. Took him to win South Boston Season 8, took him to win South Boston Season 9, and here he is taking home his 3rd checkered flag at America's hometown track. What an evening it has been for these late model stock drivers. Some of them been practicing all of the past 2 weeks for tonight's event. Others, their first time behind the wheel of these late model stocks. But I don't think anyone expected this race to play out the way it did here this evening. Horse race fans, don't go anywhere. We will be back in just a moment with interviews with your top 3 finishers for the first time in season number 10. Don't go anywhere, race fans. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to America's hometown track. Welcome back to the ASRC Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Mr. Tyler McRae, once again, I find you up in my broadcast booth, and once again, you have a checkered flag to your name here at the South Boston Speedway, now for the third time in a row over the course of the past 3 seasons. How are you feeling now that you've got another win to your name at this, dare I say, pretty darn tricky track?
It was a fun race. We started off, everybody's times are really, really close. And I think they had that little scuffle, that first caution, and someone got in the mic. I don't think he was right after that. He was pretty quick, but he wasn't as fast as he was in the beginning. Um, we had a couple weird pit stops, and I got to put those new tires on at the end. I was saving them. And I probably forced it too quick with Brian. I probably should have been more patient with that looking at the replay. So I tried to be super aggressive, just try to be aggressive. But it was a fun race. We didn't touch and made it through it. So it was a good time.
Yeah, definitely quite the event here this evening, and I think the question that I'm legally obligated to ask is, after you took so many wins home in the past couple of seasons in the Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS, how are you feeling behind the wheel of this brand new race car that has completely replaced it off of iRacing? You can't drive the old one anymore, it is gone now. Is this a worthy successor?
I like it because it's a lot of fun, but I wish they'd have done a few things different with it. But I think you'll see a few other winners this year. I think you'll definitely see some other names up here. It'll happen.
Well, it was definitely a heck of a race here tonight, and of course, congratulations taking home the first win of the season. Next week, it looks like we are heading back to North Wilkesboro Speedway. If I remember correctly, I think you did take home the win at that track last season, so how you feeling heading back there?
Oh, it's fun. I don't it ain't but a few tracks I don't like. I'm not like Mike. He hates them all. But and still wins on them, by the way, even though he hates them. But I don't mind it. I think it's fun track. I think it's grueling on the tires, so that'll be fun with only one set to change out. Try to figure out how to do it.
Well, as always, I look forward to seeing you out there. But for now, before I let you head out and celebrate your win, who do you want to thank for getting that number 99 machine up here in the broadcast booth again?
Definitely the ASRC, putting on the new league, changing cars. It's fun times out there. Bringing on the sponsor. Um, oh, I kind of went blank on the sponsor. If you can hit their name for me. You're
SM Racing Products.
yes, thank you. And the broadcast and what you do, and I like to go back and watch them. Minnie Tyrell for letting me run his paint job. That's what he runs in the Cars tour. And Dropping Bombs, of course. And Mike and all the other guys. I appreciate them. We have a fun time. And he wasn't laughing as much tonight, but he'll be back to his old self soon.
Good deal. Well, as always, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
And finishing back in position number 2, Mr. Mike Sukup, the driver. I feel like we might have spent half of Tyler's interview talking about. You've got another podium to your name. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done here this evening?
That was a lot of fun. I got myself into trouble. If that last caution hadn't come out, I probably was really hurting.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think anyone expected this race to go the way it went, but it was still a heck of a show. What do you think you might have had to have done differently to get around Tyler and take home the checkered flag this evening?
Not running into so many things. I think I ran into 2 different cautions, so I guess stop driving into things.
Well, that sounds like as good of a plan as any. If I remember correctly, talking to Tyler just a moment ago, he said you were not the biggest fan of North Wilkesboro. Is it really as bad as you make it out to be?
It's probably my least favorite track of all the tracks.
Fair enough. Well, I hope, however, next week goes out, it goes out in your favor. But for tonight, a podium to your name, a great way to start off the season. Who do you want to thank for getting that number 45 machine up here?
Oh, thank the league. This is a good time, man. I enjoy my Mondays and everybody involved in you and all that you do and the new sponsor. Uh, and just pretty much Tyler. Tyler helps me out constantly, and even when I'm running good, he's babysitting me, making sure I don't push the wrong button.
Good deal. Well, congratulations on the podium, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Sounds good, man. We'll see you then. I'm just glad I almost ran out of gas, so I'm glad we got to finish it.
Don't do that. Running out of gas is bad for you. And finishing back in P number 3, a driver that it has been a little bit of a minute since we have been able to talk to. The driver who said he really loved the old street stock, or really loved the old late model, and really hated the street stock. Now we're here with a late model again, and sure enough, you're up here on the podium in your first race. How are you feeling?
That was such a good time. I can't express how much I enjoy late models more than the street stocks. I just never got along with the way the street stocks drive. I don't know what it was exactly, but we never gelled really. And as much as loved the old late model, this new late model is just a bag of fun. It sounds great. It turns great. It just it does everything you want it to do. I got in a little bit late to the session, so I didn't have much practice. But I just hopped in and said, "We'll see what happens," and man, it turned out really well.
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected the race to play out the way it did. There were some crazy cautions here this evening, which I guess is a given considering we're at South Boston. That is the most notorious track on the ASRC schedule for having crazy cautions. But either way, you made something happen here this evening. And how are you feeling heading into North Wilkesboro next week in this new late model?
Uh, Not necessarily super confident. I had one race before tonight in the late model, and it was last week during week 13. And the late model was somewhat messed up. We had an update for it, but it was really binding up and pushing really hard at North Wilkes. So I really don't know what to expect from this thing heading into there next week. It's going to be less banking, less of an ability to kind of try and make something happen. So I think it's going to be interesting, but I think it's going to be pretty one line. It's going to be pretty hard on the tires. It's going to I don't know. It's going to be very interesting next week.
Well, it seems like we got a mixed bag of enthusiasm heading into next week, which is exactly what I like to hear. But for now, you got another podium to your name, a great way to start off the season. Who you want to thank for getting that 14 machine up here this evening?
ASRC as always, and Jason specifically for putting on this league, keeping up with it, making sure people are getting out here, getting through all the cars to kind of make sure we know who wants to be driving what to give us some participation. And of course, you as always for putting on these broadcasts. I believe they drive participation, and it makes it so much more fun to be able to go back and see what happened from a different perspective. So thank you, and thank Jason, thank ASRC.
Good deal. Well, as always, thank you for coming out. Again, congratulations on the podium. And I look forward to seeing you at North Wilkesboro next week.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to seeing you next week. Hopefully back on the podium.
Hopefully. And of course, you heard it here first, race fans. Interviews with your top 3 finishers here this evening. Before we sign things off, of course, gotta take a look down at our race results. These are unofficial. You never know. There could be a penalty. Really highly doubt there's going to be one. So for all intents and purposes, consider this to be the official results. But Tyler McRae, that number 99 machine, going to take home his 3rd win in a row at South Boston Speedway, with Travis Sukup in the 45, teammate of Tyler McRae, bringing it on home P number 2. 3rd place going to go back to that Morelli Motorsports driver. That's the 14 of Mr. Nico Morelli. 4th place going to go back to 4-time champion Brian Sabelski, the Club West Motorsports driver, with league admin Jason Gardner rounding out the top 5 here this evening. 6th place going to go back to the driver out of Canada. That's the 38 of Brandon Feeney, with the rookie driver Christopher Bryan in the 00 bringing it on home in 7th. 8th place going to go back to the 15th of Mr. Garrett Streets. He's bringing it back in 8th. I don't know what all I just said right there. And finally, the 74 of Jeremy Morrow, going to be bringing it on home in P number 9 for SM Racing Products. And of course, got to give a massive shout out again to the folks at SM Racing Products here at Streets, Jeremy Morrow, for coming on board and sponsoring ASRC here this season. teaming up with us to try and put on a heck of a show this season. Of course, if you want to check out the stuff they put up together, that is sm-racingproducts.com or SM Racing Products on Facebook. So definitely be sure to give those folks a look-see. They do some pretty cool stuff. But for now, that's all we've got here for round 1 of season number 10, South Boston Speedway. What a way to open up the season. But for now, that's all I've got, race fans. Thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing all of y'all next week at the North Wilkesboro Speedway. Have a good evening, race fans.